Good evening, I am Tina Glass, a student at Southern University Shreveport, and welcome to the Principles of Elementary Education course, where the professor is Dr. James C. Brown. Throughout this semester, we have been discussing our philosophies on education, the roles and responsibilities of schools, parents, students, and the community. The classroom has become a very diverse place. In this class, we have gained a better understanding as to why it is so important for teachers to create a portfolio and to develop their own philosophies on education. To sum up my philosophy in one sentence, I say that education is the core ingredient to success. My project today is to interview a teacher, and I will be gaining his views on how he feels about education. The person that I will be interviewing today is Mr. Frederick T. Ellis. He is an instructor at Southern University Shreveport, where he teaches clinical hematology, clinical blood banking, clinical immunology, and serology. He is also the Assistant Director of Laboratory Services at DeSoto Regional Health System, and he's a technical supervisor there. Mr. Ellis is also a senior medical technologist with Willis-Knighton Health System. And at this time, I would like to welcome Mr. Frederick T. Ellis.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Ellis. Now, I do appreciate you for participating with my class project today.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I've composed a list of questions for you. And the first question that I have is, what is your philosophy on education?
My philosophy on education comes from a quote that a famous author said over 100 years ago. And he said that no educated body of men can ever remain permanently poor, and no uneducated or miseducated group of men can expect to rise out of poverty. With that quote in mind, it is very clear that the road to economic prosperity is rooted in the obtaining of a good, complex education. And that can be industrial, technical, or formal, but it's rooted in education of some sort.
Well, that was a very interesting analogy in that quote that you used. My next question is going to be related to your strategies and techniques. I'm sure that when you have students that come to class that's prepared for lesson, makes teaching less stressful and makes your job easier. What strategies or techniques do you use to stimulate students who are not prepared for class?
Well, this is very simple on the collegiate level in which I teach on, due to the fact that you're dealing with adults. And when you're dealing with adults, it gets away from like grade school. When you're dealing with the youth of grade school, when you're dealing with adults, it's a little different. And the thing about it is this. Upon anybody entering into college, they should have a strategic plan for doing so. They should have a strategic purpose for doing so. And what I normally would do if I catch someone or someone in my class that have deviated from that purpose, I would simply remind them of that purpose and what it takes to see that purpose through, and also the benefits of seeing that purpose through. And if that's not enough to motivate an adult, then they're in the wrong place, and the show must go on and the chips will fall where they may. Now, as far as grade school, when you're dealing with children, you have to take a different approach because there are other variables to consider, there are other factors to take into account, and it's a whole different ballgame. You have to be, the teacher has a more has a more hands-on approach with trying to deal with other things that that may be factors related outside the classroom that's contributing to that child's lack of stimulation or motivation or whatever.
Well, that's very interesting, Mr. Ellis. Do you consider yourself to be dedicated enough to go above and beyond to ensure that each one of your students is being stimulated by your teaching strategies?
Well, of course, and let's talk about, you said something in the beginning of that question about dedication. Let's talk about that first, and then we'll go on to strategy. But let's talk about dedication. Dedication is a core ingredient for any teacher to be effective. Now, effective teacher. Dedication is a core ingredient. It can make a difference from an average student developing to an A or B student, or an average student going to a below average student, or it can make the difference of an underachiever becoming a passing student or drifting further into a failing student. It can make the difference from students on the bubble, depending on how dedicated the teacher is to reach those students. Now, as far as from a teaching standpoint, who wouldn't want a classroom full of overachievers? But I don't ever think it's going to be that way. So let's talk about the strategy. Now, it is the goal of the teacher, especially in grade school, and even on the collegiate level. They should devise a strategic plan and teaching strategy that's diverse enough to where it will be able to reach every type of student, and every type of student will have an opportunity to comprehend. And with something like that, that's going to place more demand on the teacher, but that's where dedication comes back into play.
Well, Ms. Ellis, you work and teach within the medical field, and I know that many students are intrigued by the prestige and the income that certain healthcare professionals have. From your professional standpoint, what advice do you give students who you think are in over their heads when they choose medical lab as their career choice?
Well, not just medical lab, any career choice. This is two things that students must have. It don't matter whether you're choosing my chosen profession, or nursing, or to be a lawyer, or a doctor, or whatever. There are two things, and there's capabilities and ability. Now, those two things sound closely related, and really they are on the surface, but underneath, psychologically, they mean two different things. Capability tells me what you have the potential to do, and ability tells me what you have the power to do. And for any student to be successful, those two things must parallel at all times. And what you have is, most of the time when these students are in these type of scenarios where it seems like they're over their head, or they can't handle the situation, or whatever the case may be, those two things are no longer parallel. They may have the potential, but they'll never extract their potential because they don't have the power to do so. And what I tell every student to do, when I advise students, is to take an honest inventory of your capabilities and your abilities. Make the necessary adjustments and sacrifices, then go from there. And your chances of being successful has greatly improved.
Well, I certainly agree with that, Mr. Ellis. Now, with so many schools failing, where do you think the weakest link is in the schools failing today?
Well, in these days of political correctness, what has happened is you get a lot of people nowadays afraid to call things exactly as they are. I'm not one of them, so I would do that right now. If you look at every one of those failing schools, and we talk about the public school sector now, every one of those schools have a near 100% black enrollment, and they're located in predominantly black neighborhood. That's your link right there. It's the environment of the black neighborhood. The black neighborhood is spawning those failures. Now, that's a bigger umbrella, but that is the link. That's the answer to your question.
All right. So, in your opinion, then, what these factors in the black communities, what is it that's in the black communities that's causing this weak link and making the schools itself fail? What is it that's in the community?
Well, it's a host of things. Well, for the most part, on the collective scale, if you look at every predominantly black neighborhood across this country, these communities has become, over time, social and moral dumping grounds. And what you have is a entity within the city that's based on crime. The biggest business in inner city communities is crime. It's gambling, prostitution, drug pushing, gang affiliation, you name it. And what has happened is all of these negativities has spawned multiple failures on multiple fronts. And the public school sector within those communities, especially on the high school and middle school level, are victims of that circumstance. So it's not that those schools are bad, they're just victims of circumstance. And the circumstance is the environment in which they reside.
All right, Mr. Ellis. My next question is, if it was your job to remove this weak link, how would you go about doing that?
Well, if you go back to the 50s and 60s, there were several things going on to try to curb this problem then. There was constitutional amendments being passed. There were civil rights acts and urban renewal programs and all kind of things like that that was formulated to serve as a means to an end, but due to the escalating problem became ends within themselves. And this problem has continued today. I don't think that's one thing that I could do. I think that collectively it would take an entire community, a mindset change. It's a psychological thing that has to correct this problem. I think that if you look at crime, drug, and substance abuse, I mean, these things are widespread. And the black community these days are breeding grounds for this status quo. I mean, it's almost irreversible. The only thing that we can do is make sure that we have a system in place that could create and spawn as many individual success stories as possible. And hopefully we spawn enough of them the way it would begin to reverse the trend. And also a system in place that has the power to see these things through. Other than that, then time will just move on and chips will fall where they may. We have to be realistic. There will be failures, there will be success. It's not going to be success across the board. That's wishful thinking. If we understand the realistic approach to this deal, we can see progress long term.
All right, Ms. Ellis. Well, let's get to the next point here. Do you believe that schools are supposed to get students ready for the workforce?
Well, in a nutshell, they are. Even when they don't realize that they're doing so. Because if you're going to spend 12 years in grade school and 4 years in college, you actually are preparing for the workforce. Because that's exactly what you're going to do once you're out of school. Because your mom and dad are going to put you out. So you're going to have to work. So hopefully you took advantage of those years in which you were their dependent and going to school to prepare yourself for independency and adulthood. Now, I think one of the things that I can pull out of your question is there are two types of workforce. You got the industrial workforce and you got the technical workforce. And the schools does both of that. That's why I kind of support those industrial crafts and stuff at the middle school and high school level that teaches children how to work with their hands. Because let's face it, every student is not going to be a college student.
That's true.
You know, so in a nutshell, it does do both. And it does a good job with that.
Well, that is true. I know some schools like Caddo Middle Career and Technology, that is one school that teach hands-on, and Fair Park High School, Booker T. Washington High Schools, and those are predominantly black schools that are doing that.
Right.
And now, Mr. Ellis, who do you think is to blame, or should we place blame on colleges and universities for failing, upcoming teachers, people who want to become teachers?
Absolutely not. I think that the Secretary of Education, based out of the White House, he's released some report a few days ago or something, placing a lot of blame on the colleges and universities for not aspiring teachers or failing the teachers, for so to say. I totally disagree with that. What has happened is that the universities have failed to sell the curriculum. They have failed to sell the profession. So as a result, if you look at what the teachers are making today, top tier students is not finna go do 4 years of college to make $40,000 a year. You're not going to get your best students to do that. Why would they do that when they have the potential to come out of school making $80,000 or $90,000 as an engineer or some of these other things? So what you have is you're going to have an influence of an overcrowding in the teaching profession over average students, and as a result of that, you're going to see some fluctuations there with some good ones being released and some not so good ones being released. Now, if they raise the standards, raise the pay, then it probably would entice some of these top tier students to come into that profession, and then you will see a better crop of teachers.
So, Mr. Ellis, are you saying that the teachers, the students are average? Is that what I'm getting from what you're saying?
No, just on a collective scale, on a mass level. We're not talking about individuals, because you can always find an individual here that's contradictory to that point of view. On the collective scale, on the mass collective scale, you have more of the average students going into the teaching profession, and you have more of the top tier students trying to maximize their potential. Now, if you are a straight A student with a 4.0 grade point average and you are an IQ of above 30, why would you want to be a teacher unless you're just in your blood to be so? You're going to want to go and do something that's going to, where you're going to extract out of that potential. You're not going to be able to extract that at $40,000 a year. Let's be real about it. But you will at 80, 90, 100, and stuff like that. So the university has not failed the teachers. They just have failed to sell the profession. You know, and the teaching profession just don't, and it's not their fault, they just don't get the respect that they deserve. Because if you think about it, every profession that's out here working and making money was taught by a teacher.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. Because teachers are teaching those engineers and doctors and lawyers and nurses.
Absolutely. And then to put a little more icing on the cake, that's one of the reasons, or the primary reason, why I teach just part-time. And I choose to work full-time within my profession because of the disparity in the finances is concerned. You know, it's not enough in the teaching profession to entice me to do it full-time when I know I can make double that in my profession. And so that is one of the core causes of not being able to draw in some of these students that would probably change that trend as far as the perception of some of these teachers is concerned. You're going to get a bunch of average and students right around the borderline going into that profession. And you're going to get some good ones too, but that's because that's what they really want to do. But the most of them are going to be doing what they can do instead of what
they're selling for. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
I hate to say that, that teaching is a job that you settle for.
It's not selling. It's not selling. What you do is, it's not selling. It's just some people try to see, and what everyone should do, try to see what is my glass ceiling. What am I able to do, and where I can extract the most amount of prosperity from. You know, and teaching is not a bad profession. You know, it's not. It's a pretty good profession. All I'm saying is that your best students. All I'm saying is the only point I'm making is your best students. These students that the university covet. They covet these 4.0, these high intellect students. They're not going to go into the teaching profession. Why would they for $40,000 when they can make $100,000? That makes no sense to me.
Okay, Mr. Ellis, well, we're going to move forward with our questioning. And you've already answered my next question, which was, why are you teaching? And you said that it was because it's in your blood. You come from a family of teachers, and it's just supplementing your income that you already have. So my last and final question is, why do you think that teachers burn out?
I don't think they burn out. It's a lot of good teachers out there. And you know, a lot of people are in the teaching profession for different reasons. And when you find a teacher that is not in it for what it is, those are the ones that burn out. When you find teachers that are not dedicated to the profession, those are the ones that burn out. Because psychologically, they're always thinking in the back of their mind, I really don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. I want to do something else. Or I'm not making enough money. Or whatever the case may be. So they burn out. Now, also, another reason for burnout is that some teachers that are placed in some of these predominantly black communities, and they're teaching these schools where there's a lot of failure going on, and then they end up blaming a lot of teachers take a lot of that blame, and it's really not their fault. You know, they're victims of circumstance. So that could be a reason why they burn out. But for the most part, it's about dedication. It's about dedication.
So we've heard from Mr. Ellis today, dedication, the community needing to do more to support our schools and students for their success. And Mr. Ellis, I would like to thank you again for your time. I know you have a real busy schedule. I appreciate you doing this project for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you have a nice day.
Thank you.
And this will conclude my interview with Mr. Frederick T. Ellis. Thank you.